Today's tech news moves fast, but understanding it shouldn't be hard. That's why Snarful Solutions Group brings you Connecting the Dots, where we break down what's happening in tech and why it matters to you. Now, let's dive in with your hosts.
Welcome back to Connecting the Dots, brought to you by Snarful Solutions Group. Now, before we unpack the biggest stories in tech today, just a quick shout out to our sponsor, Old Glory. They're that iconic music and sports fan merch store. So if you need vintage tour stuff or, the latest jersey, they've got you covered. Use the promo code SNARFUL, that's SNARFUL at checkout for 15% off your entire purchase. Check them out at oldglory.com. I'm your host, and with me is our expert, ready to connect the dots on today's news.
Hey there! Happy Monday, October 13th, 2025, everyone. It feels like a big day for infrastructure talk, definitely. And we're also seeing some market signals that maybe suggest businesses are getting a bit nervous about the final quarter.
Absolutely. So here in Sacramento, it's Columbus Day, maybe a slight chance of showers later, high around 62. But nationally, things are a bit more active.
Yeah, it looks like a storm hitting the East Coast, some heavy rain risk down in the Southwest and Four Corners, and even typhoon remnants hitting Western Alaska. So lots happening weather-wise.
Right. And speaking of choppy conditions, the financial markets saw a bit of a bounce Friday, but the week overall, well, it was down. The Dow Jones closed Friday up 0.56%. That's about 255 points. But for the whole week, it lost 1.76%.
Yeah, similar story for the S&P 500. It gained 0.40% Friday, but dropped 1.26% over the 7 days. And Bitcoin, well, it was up just a tiny bit Friday, 0.20%, but it took a real hit over the week, down more than 7.5%. So, it definitely feels like investors are being cautious, even with all the buzz around AI.
Speaking of careful moves, before we get into the main stories, we want to thank Pins and Aces for sponsoring this segment. They're the place to go for premium golf apparel and accessories, really top-notch stuff. If you're hitting the course or honestly just want some sharp gear, use that promo code SNARFUL at checkout. It gets you 21% off your entire purchase. Find them at pinsandances.com. Okay, let's get into the Morningstar Tech Report. That's our Snarful Tech article report where we connect the three biggest stories. And today, it really kicks off with this AI arms race and a huge bet on custom hardware.
That's right. Story number one, OpenAI is doubling down on custom chips, and they're partnering with Broadcom to do it. The headline is they're co-designing and producing their first in-house AI processors, custom GPUs, basically.
Okay, so this isn't just like buying a few extra chips to help out their Nvidia supply. This sounds bigger, like a whole new strategy.
Oh, much bigger. We're talking a deal potentially worth around $10 billion. But the number that really makes you pause is the scale. The plan is to roll out 10 gigawatts worth of these custom chips.
10 gigawatts. Okay, help us wrap our heads around that. What does 10 gigawatts actually mean in the real world?
It's staggering. Think about this. 10 gigawatts is roughly the power needed for over 8 million U.S. homes continuously. Or another way to look at it, it's like 5 times the peak electricity output of the Hoover Dam. Just for these chips.
Wow. Okay, so why build that much? And why Broadcom specifically? Why not just keep pouring money into Nvidia?
Well, it's about a few things. Diversification is one. Not putting all your eggs in the Nvidia basket. Cost control is another big one. And optimization. Nvidia's chips are powerful, sure, but they're general purpose. By working with Broadcom, OpenAI can design chips specifically tailored to their AI models. That could mean faster training, faster inference, and probably cheaper operation in the long run compared to just buying off the shelf.
Right, tailor-made efficiency. Makes sense. Is there a specific technical edge Broadcom brings here beyond just helping design the chip?
Yeah, there is, and it's actually pretty interesting. Besides co-designing the chip itself, Broadcom is going to supply all the networking gear for these new systems. And they're using high-speed Ethernet. Now, this is key because it's a direct challenge to NVIDIA's own networking tech, InfiniBand. InfiniBand has kind of been the default, almost mandatory choice for these massive AI clusters. But OpenAI going with Ethernet, well, it suggests they want a more open, non-proprietary standard for how their systems talk to each other.
Interesting. An architectural power play almost. But wait, if they're worried about relying too much on Nvidia, didn't they also just announce that massive $100 billion deal with Nvidia and another big 6 gigawatt deal with AMD? That seems complicated. 3 different suppliers.
It is complicated. It's definitely a hedging strategy, trying to avoid a single point of failure if one supplier has issues. But yeah, the complexity is enormous. Think about it. You've got resources running on NVIDIA's architecture, AMD's architecture, and now your own custom Broadcom architecture, making all of that work together efficiently, globally. It's a huge integration challenge. Sam Altman calls it critical infrastructure building. But the risk, The risk is that they're betting billions they can actually unify all these different compute pieces effectively by 2029. There's a real chance for things to get inefficient.
The AI infrastructure arms race, indeed. And the entry fee is measured in gigawatts and fragmentation risk, it sounds like. Okay, let's pull on that thread of needing massive infrastructure. That also requires people, right? To build it, manage it, move the products it enables. Our second story shifts to the labor market, and it's sending some pretty cautious signals for the holidays.
Yeah, this focuses on Amazon. Their holiday hiring plans are always a bit of a bellwether for the retail sector.
Yeah.
So Amazon announced they plan to hire 250,000 workers for the holiday season. That includes full-time, part-time, and seasonal roles.
250,000, I mean, that still sounds like a lot of jobs. Why is that being framed as cautious?
Because it's flat. It's the exact same number they targeted in 2023 and the same number again in 2024. So while Amazon holding steady is notable, it actually makes them stand out. The broader forecast for holiday hiring this year is being described by analysts as, well, bleak.
Bleak, that's a strong word. How bleak are we talking?
Potentially quite bleak. Some reports suggest that retailers overall might add fewer than 500,000 seasonal jobs this year, total, across the whole sector. If that turns out to be true, it would be the lowest number of seasonal hires since way back in 2009, right after the financial crisis. We're seeing other big retailers either staying flat like Amazon or just not announcing their plans at all, which usually isn't a great sign.
Wow. So even though Amazon is bumping pay, they're investing over $1 billion more, getting seasonal workers to an average of $19 an hour, permanent folks to $23. Even with that investment, the rest of the market seems to be pulling back hard. It feels different this year. Like, companies are genuinely worried about Q4 spending.
That seems to be exactly the signal, yes.
Yeah.
Companies don't appear to be betting on a big holiday spending surge. Analysts are pointing to things like worries about tariffs, inflation sticking around, and just general anxiety about the job market weakening. Now, e-commerce itself is still expected to grow. Online spending in the U.S. for November and December is projected at around $253.4 billion. That's up about 5.3% from last year.
Okay, so people are still buying online, maybe even more so. But the overall hiring needed to support all retail, including brick and mortar, is flat or shrinking everywhere except Amazon. It really sends a nervous message about consumer confidence, doesn't it? Like, CEOs are bracing for a slowdown, not celebrating growth.
Caution is definitely the word for the Q4 labor market this year.
All right, let's pivot one more time for our final Morningstar story. We've talked hardware, we've talked people. Now let's talk about the software driving the future of transportation. Specifically, self-driving tech and a London-based startup called Wayve.
Right, Wayve. They're making some serious waves, no pun intended. They're reportedly in talks to raise a huge amount of money. We're hearing numbers between $1 billion and $2 billion, potentially from giants like Microsoft and SoftBank. And a funding round like that could value the company somewhere around $8 billion.
$8 billion. Okay, they must have something pretty special going on. We followed self-driving for a while. What's Wayve's angle? What makes them different?
Their core technology is something they call embodied AI. So think about the big players, like Waymo. They often rely heavily on creating these incredibly detailed 3D maps of everywhere the car might drive. LiDAR is usually key there. Wayve's approach is different. They focus more on software that learns primarily from watching real-world traffic, using cameras and machine learning.
Ah, okay. So less about mapping every single curb and lane line beforehand, and more about teaching the AI to understand the flow and intent within the environment, like how a human learns to drive.
Exactly. In theory, this could remove the need for those constantly updated, super expensive, high-definition maps, especially across large areas. And their software is designed to be vehicle agnostic, meaning it could potentially work in different types of cars or even delivery vans.
That sounds really flexible, but if they're not using those HD maps, doesn't that remove a layer of safety redundancy, especially for tricky city driving? How do they handle that?
That's really the big debate in the self-driving world right now. Wayve, and obviously its investors, believe their deep learning approach can actually handle the unpredictable nature of cities better than static maps. And the money seems to be agreeing. Nvidia, which already works with them, Wayve's next-gen system runs on Nvidia's DueDrive AGX Thor platform. Nvidia is apparently talking about putting in another $500 million.
Okay, and we know Uber has been testing Wayve tech in London, but who's actually planning to put this in cars people can buy?
Well, the most interesting consumer angle right now is probably Nissan. They're planning to incorporate Wayve's tech into a Level 2 autonomous system designed for urban driving.
Level 2, remind us what that means again for the listener.
Right. Level 2 is advanced driver assistance. The car can handle steering, accelerating, braking under certain conditions, but crucially, the human driver must stay fully engaged, watching the road, ready to take over instantly. Think hands off, eyes on.
Got it. So Nissan's using this for city driving assistance. When might we see that?
Nissan's using a setup with 11 cameras, 5 radars, and actually 1 LiDAR sensor, too, for this system. They're aiming to roll it out in Japan initially, targeting their 2027 fiscal year. So, yeah, this huge potential funding for Wayve really underscores that the self-driving race is speeding up, but the technologies are splitting. You've got the map-heavy approach, and now this big bet on AI learning its way through the real world.
Fascinating. It really shows the autonomous future isn't just one path. It's more like a complex intersection with different ideas competing.
For sure. And right now, a lot of the momentum and the money seems to be flowing towards that AI-centric path.
Okay, before we wrap up the Morningstar report, one final mention for our sponsor, Skoni. They make premium golf shoes, super stylish, comfortable, high performance. If you need new shoes for the course, check them out. Use that promo code SNARFUL, SNARFUL, at checkout for 15% off your whole purchase. The website is skoni.com, SKONIS.com.
All right, so let's quickly recap the big threads today. First, that AI infrastructure arms race is definitely accelerating. OpenAI's deal with Broadcom for 10 gigawatts of custom chips highlights this push for control, for diversification, but also introduces that risk of fragmented computing power.
Then we saw the labor market flashing warning signs. Amazon's flat holiday hiring is a standout only because the rest of the retail forecast looks potentially like the worst since 2009. It signals real caution about consumer spending in Q4.
And finally, the self-driving race is evolving. Wayve's potential billion-dollar-plus funding shows a major bet on embodied AI, teaching cars to learn like humans, rather than relying solely on pre-built maps, driving forward those Level 2 systems for city use.
Yeah, the connecting thread here seems to be how these massive tech ambitions, custom chips, autonomous cars, are bumping up against the realities of the current economy. The next year or so will really show if these multi-billion-dollar bets can thrive if consumers stay cautious. So for you listening, maybe the question is, which approach wins out first? OpenAI's complex, fragmented chip strategy, or the market's cautious, perhaps fragmented approach to hiring and spending?
That's a great thought to leave things on.
We're here to help at Snarful, so reach out on our website if you have any more questions.
That's a wrap on today's top stories. Remember, tech doesn't have to be complicated, and we're here to help connect the dots. If you've got questions or want to learn more, visit us at snarful.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.